Today, interactive devices are ubiquitous. Interactive installations can be found in all kinds of spaces, and at the same time, most of us carry their mobile devices around wherever they go. However, well-established interaction models mainly focus on single-surface installations. In the course of our work, we wanted to explore the changes that occur when integrating personal devices into public interactive installations. Generally, a distinction is made between three kinds of spaces. Public spaces, which are openly accessible to anyone, like the open street or a train station. Semi-public spaces, which are accessible to certain people, like a company cafeteria or a museum with an entry fee. And at last, private spaces, like the own house, hotel rooms, or friends' houses. The way people interact with installations in these spaces, though, is very different. While users know what to expect of their private devices, public and semi-public installations face some difficulties because of two phenomena. There's display and interaction blindness, when displays vanish in the clutter of things competing for our attention in public. And the spotlight effect, when people refrain from interacting because of the fear of social embarrassment. Over the time, several interaction models with the aim of covering these phenomena have been formulated. However, as mentioned before, all these models focus on installations with one single central device. With the growing spread of mobile devices, though, concepts such as bring your own device are becoming more and more important, and several architectures for integrating own devices into multi-device settings have been proposed so far. When doing so, though, the interaction focus shifts away from the central display. To assess the differences from traditional single-surface interaction models, we developed a multi-device quiz game for a museum which visitors could join through their own devices. The Weisskunig Quiz. The game idea was that visitors could be invited to an audience with Maximilian I if they earned social ranks by proving their knowledge about him. So why did we decide on a quiz game? From literature, we defined three central needs that our installation would need to fulfill. The functions needed to be clear from the very beginning. There needed to be a balance between the ease of use and the ease of learning, because museum visitors would likely not have as much time to learn the interaction as they would have in a place with a longer dwell time. And, since museum visitors greatly vary in age, interests, and technology experience, our installation needed to appeal to as many of them as possible. We concluded that a quiz game would be quickly understandable because the concept is already familiar to everyone. The installation was located in a niche along the path through the exhibition, so it could benefit from many passers-by while neither obstructing the visitor flow nor being too openly visible because of the spotlight effect. This was the large main screen of the installation. It faced towards the entrance of the niche to serve as an eye-catcher. On the left, it showed a picture from the Weisskunig, a matching question, and 4 answer possibilities. On the right, it showed a timer and a visualization of the answers, and on the bottom, a call to action message in German and English to use the own device or the stationary tablet to join. The design of the main screen was based on key interaction principles. Whenever someone selected an answer, a little bubble would fly into his respective bar as a visual feedback. When the timer reached the end, the columns would turn into a bar chart to show the distribution of all the answers given in the course of the exhibition. We chose a bar chart as the method for visualization because it is a well-known visualization method among different ages. The guest list was a smaller screen which served as a leaderboard and additional motivation factor. Depending on the number of correctly answered questions, the visitors earned social ranks: beggar, bourgeoisie, and nobility. As soon as they achieved one of the higher ranks, their username would be put up on the guest list. This screen faced slightly towards the entrance of the niche so that new users could get information and leaving ones could look for their names. The own devices and the stationary tablet displayed the content in the visitor's preferred language, and they could choose an answer by tapping one of the answer buttons. For people without a smartphone, we provided a stationary tablet that functioned the same way as the own devices. Initially, we wanted to put this tablet on a lectern, but this was denied due to aesthetical reasons. Instead, it was put on a stool and chained to the wall. Now for the evaluations. The installation was deployed in the history exhibition The Emperor's New Saint at Klosterneuburg Monastery, Austria. We conducted 2 evaluations consisting of observations and interviews during the exhibition time. The game itself also logged data such as dwell time, answer time, and correct answers. These data were anonymous and could not be traced back to any user. The first evaluation took place in May 2019, during regular opening hours of the museum. The test conductors roamed around the exhibition to not give visitors the impression of being watched. We had 14 passers-by in total. 12 of them approached the installation to interact, and 2 glanced without interacting. 8 people agreed to an interview, of which 3 were female and 5 were male. Their age was between 9 and 69 years, with a median of 44.9 and a standard deviation of 22.5. Only 1 person used their own device, the other 7 used a stationary tablet. The insights that were gathered in the first evaluation were the following. Visitors were curious about the installation. 5 of 8 participants explicitly mentioned this in the interview. According to our plan, the tablet should have served as a hint that the installation is interactive. However, its changed placement behind the vitrine led to 3 visitors approaching the screen first, only noticing the tablet when they were about to leave. 1 person missed the call to action message on the screen and tried to touch it, even though it was mounted rather high for touch input. The visitors did not have any problem handling multiple devices at the same time, but single players, 4 out of 8, did not notice the connection between their given answers and the answer bubbles on the screen. This did not happen when multiple visitors were playing at the same time, because they saw each other's bubbles fly on the screen. The second evaluation was carried out in June, on a day where a middle school class freely explored the exhibition for 2 hours. The school class consisted of 8 boys and 12 girls, aged between 11 and 12 years. 18 of the kids used their own devices, while the other 2 used a tablet. The insights of the second evaluation were: while the children quickly understood how the game worked, 3 of them assumed that the large screen was a touch screen. 1 kid also tried to touch it, even though they had already played with their own device for several minutes. The honeypot effect was very visible. Whenever passing children saw others playing, they curiously stopped to watch and then joined. The problem with the answer bubbles did not happen during this observation. On the contrary, when 1 boy saw the animation of the bubbles, he even turned around to a test conductor in surprise and asked, "There are others playing too?" So we can say that the problem was indeed only persistent for single players. Because less people used a stationary tablet in this observation, the motivating effect of the gamification elements were more visible, as the children regularly checked how far they had already progressed and proudly announced when they saw their name on the guest list. The game also encouraged social interaction, when the children would form groups, discussing the questions together and pointing towards the visualizations. Taking all the insights from the evaluations, we can say that the principles of already established interaction models are also valid for interactive installations that incorporate own devices. However, there are 3 additional points that should be considered when creating such an installation. 1. Provide obvious hints to use the own or stationary devices. A simple call to action message like we used is not sufficient, since people tend to miss it even when it is always visible. Instead, the elements in the installation space could be arranged in a way that the installation does not create any affordances to touch the screen in the first place, like putting benches and stationary devices around the main screen. This could also convince visitors to spend more time at the installation when they have the opportunity to sit down. 2. Show clear connections between the devices. Users need to see which interactions on their device influence which factors on the main screen. Our animation of the answer bubbles, for example, could be extended to better guide the user's eyes from the mobile device towards the main screen. Depending on the type of installation, auditory or haptic cues might be suitable as well. 3. Especially if an installation requires an app instead of a browser-based application, provide alternative stationary devices. We recorded 1,034 play sessions, of which 650 were carried out on the stationary tablet, so without it, the game could have lost about 60% of all players. To finish this presentation, we proposed the multi-device interaction model extension, which extends the interaction model by Müller et al. By including own devices. We have the passive zone, where people walk by the installation. To pass to the viewing zone, the visitor's attention must be raised in some way. The most important information about the installation should be accessible from here. In the viewing zone, viewers have to find out if the installation is interactive, how they can join, and what the customs and rules around it are. Information on how to interact and motivating incentives, such as posters or promoters, have to be placed in this zone. Because of the own devices, there's no border between the viewing zone and the interaction zone. Different from Müller's model, it is more of a gradient. As soon as a visitor is motivated to interact, they have passed the threshold. Motivating viewers can be done by providing a challenge, raising curiosity, giving the freedom of choice, or gamification elements. Using own devices for the interaction reduces the possibility of the spotlight effect, because the interaction is more anonymous, and this also lowers the participation barrier. Because the viewing and the interaction zones meld, there is a space around the main screen that users should not enter to not occlude the view of others. The special way of interacting also has to be communicated clearly, so that the installation works as intended. We explored how bringing your own device into a semi-public interactive installation influences the underlying single-surface interaction models. We found that the main difference are the interaction zones shifting away from the center screen, and the viewing and interaction zones melding, which raises the need of even clearer interaction feedback. Our installation was tested in a museum, which is only semi-public. In a real public environment, an installation would have to face even more challenges, which would have to be investigated separately, such as accessibility under different lighting or environmental conditions, operating hours, or higher user traffic.